Gentlemen, welcome back to Exotic Astrology, and we had an amazing session on Remedies of Saturn by Kṣaṇāti ji, and today now we are going to start on Rahu. Most awaited. Please enlighten us, sir, on Rahu. We are waiting.
Namaste, Bhabajeet. This is very exciting for me. Looking forward to Remedy with Rahu. I don't think anyone who has introduced to Rahu isn't at least a little interested to find out more about who Rahu is, the history or mythology of Rahu, and how or why Rahu affects us. And when we're looking at remedies for Rahu, just like we did for Saturn, when's the most appropriate time for the remedy of Rahu? Okay, so Rahu Dasha, Rahu Mahadasha, Rahu Antardasha, Ketu Mahadasha, Ketu Antardasha, Rahu Ketu return, which means Rahu and Ketu are returning to the natal position of the chart. Also, the Rahu Ketu half return, when Ketu goes to Rahu's position in the natal chart. So these are all the most significant times to apply the remedies. Again, we did Saturn was Saturday. Rahu is also considered Saturday, but Rahu actually gets stronger on Saturday night. If you've ever wondered why things get a little bit crazy on Saturday night, it's because Rahu's usually the one who's the DJ at the party. And I actually think Rahu is strongest around 1 or 2 in the morning on Sunday morning. Before the sunrise on Sunday morning, Rahu is extremely strong. So Saturn's strongest during the day on Saturday, but very late in the night, in the early morning on Saturday, Sunday, Rahu is very strong. So that's great time to apply this Rahu remedies. But if you're in the Rahu Dasha, you can try to do these as much as possible every day. There's 2 color spectrums that color therapies that I like to use, and one is rust-colored clothing. Rust-colored clothing. That means brownish-orange colored clothing. So it can be somewhere, it can be brown, it can be orange if it has a little brown, or it can be somewhere between brown and orange. And the other colors is multicolored and striped clothing. So this is clothing with many colors, clothing with many stripes. The rust color clothing kind of increases the power of Rahu, but the multicolored and striped clothing, that kind of enhances Ketu, so you're kind of reducing the Rahu energies. Next, we'll discuss mantra. I'll do Gemstone last. Next, we'll discuss mantra. Now, if someone has a very weak Rahu and it's not in a happy position and it's affecting their job, and it's in the second house or the 10th house, so it's affecting their finances in a pretty difficult way, then you might want to experiment with the traditional Rahu mantra, especially or if you're a Rahu ascendant person, because there's some aspect of your dharma, and Rahu can show a dharma, but there's some aspect of your dharma which is getting to know Rahu. So the best way of doing this is through the chanting, and I did the Rahu chanting years. The chant goes, Ardakayam Mahaviryam Chandraditya Vimardinam Simhita Garbha Sambutam Tam Rahu Pranamamyaham. Oh, yeah. So now Rahu, you can feel him, I can feel him. He's here. So there's this vibration of increasing the energy of Rahu through mantra, especially when you need it for specific things. Like, let's say you're a politician and you have Rahu in the 10th house, bust out that Rahu mantra, because Rahu gives you what you want, and it gives you what you want materially. So it might not be beneficial spiritually for the person to be performing the Rahu mantra. So let's hope that Rahu's not in a spiritual position in the chart. But if it's in a very material position in the chart, then this is an interesting remedy to perform. Now, the overarching remedy is prayers to the Deva Durga. Durga is the slayer of demons, or as Bhabajeet was telling me, the protector of the fortress. It represents as a guardian, like a fortress. So Rahu is considered a demon, and Durga is the slayer of the demon. So Om Durgaye Namaha, Om Durgaye Namaha, Om Durgaye Namaha 108 times reduces the power of Rahu. So if your desires, your temptations, your impulses are getting in the way of your growth, then I don't think you should be performing the Rahu mantra. Then you should be performing the Durga mantra, Om Durgaye Namaha, and other forms of Durga sutras and mantras, and even puja. And this will take the demon away so that you don't give in to your impulses or your addictions or the things that are adharmic that are no longer serving you. But speaking from the perspective of a Rahu ascendant, you have to go through it to really find it out. So that's the mantra approach. And again, the Durga focus to kind of reduce the influence of Rahu. But if Rahu's giving you material success and you want to encourage that, and you're kind of a left-handed kind of vibration, then, don't be shy. Now, as I mentioned, the herb Jatamansi, you take it cooked in milk or milk substitute an hour before bed. It treats Rahu, it treats Saturn, but it calms the mind. Rahu can increase wind in the mind and thoughts in the mind and desires in the mind and compulses and impulses in the mind. So you want to remove those compulses and impulses. And so it's very important with Rahu, the herb Jatamansi. And the thing about Rahu, it's very sensitive to what it eats. So if you have strong Rahu influence, then the tamasic quality in the food is going to affect the tamasic quality in your mind. So with Saturn people, I like them to drink the bone broth. But for Rahu, not so much. It's good for them to be vegetarian. It's good for them to be sattvic diet. It's good to them to avoid excessive amounts of anything. For them to be very kind of, Rahu creates austerity. So they're to be very kind of serious and austere when it comes to what they put inside their body. See, and Rahu likes to alter its consciousness, and that's worth discussing. But the way that we alter our consciousness in the world today is an embarrassment to the Devas. Because the Devas, they used to consume the Soma. They used to consume the Amritam. I'll tell you, it had an effect. In other words, you felt something after you drank it, okay? But it didn't feel like alcohol. And it made you immortal. It was like symbolic for the Devas to drink it because they were already immortal. So then they would just go into this place of immortal bliss when they consume the Soma. So Rahu is looking for the Soma. So Rahu remedy, the first remedy approach, as we get into the lifestyle practical side of things, is complete sobriety from recreational substances. If you have strong Rahu influence, you should have sobriety, but the key word there is recreational. In India, on the special holy day of Shiva, they consume the Banga chai and they do Shiva chanting all day. Nothing wrong with that. Rahu honors that. That improved karma with Rahu. Also, the Native Americans, they have the peyote cactus. The South Americans have the Brazilians, they have Peruvians, they have the ayahuasca. So there are certain sacraments out there that are kind of like soma. They have a soma type energy. But that has nothing to do with the recreational use of substances. And with Rahu, no substances should be used recreationally. Only with the intention of some divine evolution or growth like the soma could bring. And as a Rahu Satyabhishak ascendant, I'm looking for the soma my whole life. And I study Ayurveda, I study South American shamanism. I'll let you know when I find it. So, moving on, Rahu represents foreign and exotic experiences. So now we'll get more into the practical remedies. So the greatest remedy for Rahu is foreign and exotic travel. There's two types of foreign and exotic travel. The first is internationally. So any type of international travel, improve karma with Rahu. Also in your own country, Bhabajeet, Germany, me, United States, if we travel to places in our countries that we're living in right now that we've never been to before, that's also good for Rahu. But international travel's better, but going someplace you've never been before locally is also positive if you can't exactly make it to another country. And also, if you like astrocartography, you should look at your lines for where you should be going. Now, the next is foreign and exotic in terms of experiences. First, foreign and exotic experiences means that you haven't had that experience before. And Rahu represents this uncarved territory that we haven't experienced yet. So, proper remedy for Rahu is to try new things, is to have new experiences, is to try all of the things in your life that you're curious about that you haven't tried before. Here's the funny thing about Rahu. 8 out of 10 things that you try, you will dislike. That's why Rahu creates austerity, because you have to try 10 things to like 2 of them. But finding things that you don't like, are not part of your dharma, are the a-dharma, are equally valuable because they get you closer and closer to the ultimate truth. So again, we might be having an experience of trying something new and disliking it, but that experience is also part of the journey with Rahu. It will eventually lead to something that you will really, really like and will change you, especially considering Rahu's position in the chart. And then the next layer of foreign and exotic means there's always something in our life which is unusual, which is outside of the box, which is quote unquote weird, which we're already kind of into and kind of like a little bit. And that's Rahu, and that's our Rahu curiosity. So if you're in a Rahu dasha, Rahu return, those interests, your outside of the box interests, they might be sitting on the back shelf. But the remedy for Rahu is to put them on the front desk. Take all of your outside of the box, unique, outside of societal norm interest and hobbies, and put them on your front desk. They are to be the priority and focus of your life at that time, because Rahu represents the full realization of our mystical or occult potential. And how can we ever find that potential if we're leaving our curiosity on the back shelf? So that's what I wanted to say about Rahu. I hope that was interesting, Bhabajeet ji. Om Namah Shivaya.
Yeah, it was very interesting, the things which you said about Rahu, and especially regarding Rahu, I always felt that Rahu gives, they say that, Rahu is a bad planet. They say like this, not that any book or anybody has said, but what Rahu actually represents. Rahu represents that desire to think that I do not need God or spirituality in my life. Rahu represents that desire which says that you were matter, you are matter, and you will be matter. There's nothing called a spirit. So Rahu is actually meaning that we have to understand one day that we have to go beyond something which is called as matter, and we also have to go towards spirit, as that's what the scriptures also inform us about. So Rahu actually can never be bad if we use it in a proper way. So Rahu will always give a temptation, but that free will is always there with us. Do we want to indulge in that or not? So for example, as you were talking of, so many times people tell me that, oh, what to do, like there was one lady, she was from UK, and then she told me that, oh, I like your videos very much, but one thing that you tell in the videos is, you should abstain from alcohol. It's very difficult, it's the way the culture in UK is, how can you just say no? And then I said, well, madam, you can still say no. They're not going to hang you if you say that, oh my god, I can't. So always remember with Rahu that the free will is always there, and Rahu in a good way can represent, see, Rahu represents innovation basically. Rahu Ketu represents the boundaries. They say wherever Rahu Ketu is sitting, you have to break the boundaries and go to the other side. Now that can happen in a good or in a bad way also. That is dependent on us. I have seen if you remember, last time we were discussing on the charts of many of the people who I know on spirituality. And if you remember the last chart which I was showing, which you will definitely not remember, but I always remember that chart. That was a chart of a Capricorn ascendant, and that person has Rahu in the ascendant. Now this person, I have stayed with him from around 2011 around, and whenever there was a need to do something new in the spiritual community, I'm not saying in the material circle, in the spiritual community, which would benefit everybody else, then he would be the first one to say yes to it. He would be the first one to suggest that we can do this like this, we can do it like that. For example, when I was in SRM University in Chennai, so what happened was, one of my seniors, he went to give a Bhagavad Gita into the hostel, and then the warden, he caught him and said that you cannot give religious books here. It's okay to distribute other books, but religion and spirituality, it is not allowed here. India is a modern country, India is civilized. These books are for the old and the wretched and the outdated people. We should distribute civilized book, not uncivilized books like the Gita, of course. So then this senior whose chart I was showing that day, he said, okay, if they are talking like this, then we can make some new books on topics like personality development, how to be positive in life, how to improve your efficiency, how to study properly. So then what he did was he prepared a course and a curriculum, and this was something very out of the box. I mean, no spiritual guru would say that, oh, we should directly give the Bhagavad Gita. Why to, give such topics? These are unnecessary, although they are good. But then he said, well, if they are not letting you enter the hostels, how will you give these books? So this is an example of Rahu, which is very well placed. Now, I am not talking of Rahu's placement in Capricorn or in ascend or in his ascendant. I'm just giving this as an example that before you say that Rahu is bad, now Rahu can be so and so called bad in other way, that it represents breaking boundaries. So, for example, if you are married and then if you think of crossing the boundaries and going and starting an affair somewhere, that is where Rahu is, you could say, quote unquote, it's bad. So
Yeah.
breaking the boundaries doesn't mean it is good or bad. It could be good if you are in tune with the spiritual energies. It can be horrible, it can be horrendous, it can be disastrous for you or for your family or for everybody else if you are not. So that's the biggest solution for Rahu. I feel that we should read the scriptures. We should, as you said, mantras, and about Goddess Durga also you said. So then we will know when to break the boundary, to what extent, and when should we put the full stop. Because many times, in the name of innovation, or just in the name of doing something new, we break some tradition which we should have not. And on the other side, you will see sometimes, just for the sake of following a tradition, we continue such certain things which we should not continue and which we should have broken long back. So that is where your Rahu comes and Rahu plays, and Rahu can deal with fanaticism also, and Rahu can also deal with things like being overconfident,
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
thinking that my way is the highway, that what I know is, because see, that's what the cloud is. They say that uh, a tree which has a lot of fruits is always bent. You know, there's a lot of big fruits in the tree, you will see it's always bent. But that means if somebody has knowledge, actually he knows that there's so much that I don't know, because he knows so much. So that is why he's humble. But a person who doesn't know, he will always boast, and he will always show, because Rahu represents the cloud, the showbiz. So the people who are ruled by Rahu, as I was talking to Dr. Arjun Pai and Sam Jeppy also regarding this, and Sam Jeppy said very properly that Rahu is the head. It's disconnected with their digestive system. So sometimes Rahu can give you this feeling that you can die, you take too much information. I know this, I know that, I know this also, I know that also. Have you seen people discussing about politics, of India, of London, of US, of Russia? And then sometimes I wonder that how can you know politics so deeply of four countries, and then these same people will discuss about cricket, about everything in the world, except self-realization, except asking the question, sir, who am I? Except that, everything they will know, everything they will ask, everything they will talk. So it's great to talk about politics and such stuff. At the same time, you should also ask this question, that who am I? What will happen to me one day? I will die one day. This material body is going to perish, and what will happen to me at that time? So that question, every person who has Rahu prominent, either it's in the ascendant or with the moon or with the lord of the ascendant, should always ask this question: what's the end goal of life? And along with that, if you take Rahu, you channelize it in a proper way, well, Rahu can do wonders for you.
Yeah. Excellent. So one of my teachers, Simon Chikoisky, used to say that you can sometimes look at Ketu for remedy when it comes to Rahu, because Ketu is the moksha karaka and Rahu is your desires before moksha. That I'm Aquarius ascendant, and then Rahu is there, so Rahu is in own sign, and then it's Satabishak Nakshatra, so it's in own nakshatra. But my Ketu is in 7th house. So I've been married 3 years, and my wife, her whole purpose is to stop reincarnating. For me, I could just keep reincarnating. We have this discussion all the time. Like, I love life. I love the experience of life. If I could be immortal, maybe I would. And my wife's like, I'm doing everything I can so that this is my last life. And then I also have K2 in the 7th house. So through my wife and my marriage, I've learned so much about what the ultimate goal of life is. And there's Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, but it is say that moksha is the ultimate aim. In other words, we have to satisfy Dharma, Artha, Kama before we can experience moksha, but we can't forget that moksha is ultimate.
And one of the biggest remedies of Rahu is, I feel, to just sit down and do what you should do. Like, for example, you know that you should do something,
Yeah.
and you know that there's that procrastinating tendency inside you.
Uh-huh.
That you know you should be doing it, but there's that some feeling which is lurking inside, you know.
Facebook.
Yeah, so that's what people do. And one of the biggest remedies of Rahu also, I feel, is that you should keep you should not put yourself in a position where you know that you will get distracted. You know, there's this two things which in scripture there's, you know, yama and dama, you know? So one thing is that you mentally abstain. Okay, I know that, you know, oh, this is not good for me, then I stay away from it. But now suppose you physically you are too much into drug addiction or something like that, and you take a mental resolution that I will not take drugs from tomorrow. That's fine, that's great. But at the same time, externally, if you are going again and again and meeting those friends who are, you know, pulling you into drugs, and then you go and boast there that, oh, I have this willpower, you know, I will stay with them, I will not take drugs. No, that doesn't work like that. So external and internally you have to put that pause button. And externally also, if Rahu is not well placed, if you feel that you always have difficulties, then you have to put yourself in a position where you don't have to cut a sorry figure. And
A
as a
hundred,
you can always put yourself in good company, go and visit a spiritual community
a
rather
hundred
than,
percent.
yeah.
They say sometimes that Rahu is what you call healthy selfishness, because you have to do what you need to do for yourself before you can do anything for anybody else.
Yes.
So it's very important to, like you said, not to distract yourself. But the Rahu person is the most distracted. So that's why they have to be selfish in removing distractions. For
Yeah,
me,
and that is why they say, no, charity begins at home.
yeah. So I close my computer down, turn down the tablet, turn off my cell phone, and I just put on some soft music and just listen, and then I'll maybe do some meditation, because otherwise there's too much distraction from technology.
And this is medically also proved, and this is related. So what happens is, suppose, let's take the example of Facebook. So suppose somebody is sitting in the workplace and he's doing something in Facebook, you know, parallelly, you know, checking this, checking that, like that. So then what happens is he gets used to that so much that he's unable to do one thing at a time. So now the problem is, throughout the day you may be using Facebook, but what about when you are sleeping? When you are closing your eyes, because you are habituated to do two things parallelly. Then when you are sleeping, you are officially, you are not using Facebook, but what happens, your mind is going on like this.
That's
And then you
that's probably why I'm a baseball player in many of my dreams.
And that's why you can't sleep, and then your body is not well rejuvenated in the morning, and then that's why then again you feel that the life is not good, then again you will do that more. So it's like a vicious cycle. You do not sleep properly because there are different levels of sleep. If you do not go to that third level, as they say, then your body doesn't refresh itself properly, no? Whatever it is, I'm not going to the terminology, but the point is the same thing happens when you are sitting with somebody else also. I have seen people, you are talking to them and they're like, mm, yeah, actually, yeah, life's good. It doesn't work like that. So we should know when to use Rahu, and not just let Rahu use us all over the place. It's like that's very dangerous, and that hampers a lot of relationships and
But
anything.
Rahu, very well placed in the chart, can show amazing musician, amazing celebrity, like actor, actress, musician, creative ability. So usually it's a blessing and a curse. A great chart that I like to use is Amy Winehouse. She was a exalted Rahu ascendant, Rahu Taurus ascendant. And so often you see this blessing of all this expression, but if it's not expressed properly, destruction and escape. And like Bhabajeet say, it's our perception. So we can either think of Rahu as an angel or a demon, but the truth is, just like us, he's both. Now, if you want to, Rahu will manifest like a demon if you are constantly thinking about the future, if you are constantly acting out of fear, if you are constantly thinking about the past, if you are constantly trying to control. But thinking about the past and the future and thinking about your fears will make Rahu the worst demon in your life. Also, Rahu can be guardian angel. If we can only live in this moment, if we can live in the today, it starts with the day, then it goes to an hour, then it goes to a minute, then it goes to a second. But can Bhabajeet G and I enjoy each second that we have with each other today? I hope so. I have.
Same here.
So I think, again, if you have difficult karma with Rahu, try to remove the future and past from your mind, because only in the moment can you truly experience the bliss. And there are lots of writers, Eckhart Tolle, Power of Now, Be Here Now, Ram Dass, lots of spiritual teachers and speakers are saying a similar message.
Yeah, in fact, Krishna also says in the Gita, na, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma na sochati na kangshati. One who is situated in transcendence is not thinking of sochati kangshati. It means he is not hankering or lamenting. Lamenting means crying for something which you lost in the past, and hankering means wanting something which you don't have. Maybe you want it somewhere in the future. So, one who is not doing this too is actually, that's what people ask, that how can we stop thinking about the past or future? Well, the problem is it's not so easy, because Krishna says that one who has achieved this is actually in transcendence. So when you say that somebody has is not thinking of the past or the future, it means essentially you are saying the person has realized that I am not this body, I am the Atma. That's what essentially it means. And that is why it is so difficult. So Krishna also says, Sama sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhakti labhate param. That is the time when his spiritual practices actually begin, to be very honest. So the thing is that we should then you can take it the other way around, that if we elevate our consciousness spiritually, then we are automatically achieving that. Artificially we cannot pretend that okay, we will not think of the past or the future. That's how the current society is going about doing all these things. Oh, just think that you are in the present, you are not in the past, not in the future. But that cannot be achieved artificially unless you elevate your consciousness spiritually. And when you do that, you get that as a byproduct. It's like automatically achieved, because the mind is peaceful, the mind is calm that time. Anyways, it's been a long time, I think. Thank you very much. Anything else you would like to
Thank you,
share?
thank you. And I think all the remedies we discussed will also elevate the spirituality so the person can be more in their
Definitely,
own.
definitely, definitely. Thank you very much. And as
Thank you,
we
Bhabajeet.
discussed earlier, depending on the response, we will see if we should continue it for all the planets. Okay.
Excellent. If not, another topic soon as well. Om Namah Shivaya.
Definitely. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Namaste.